Greetings. This is Caroline Staten with Transition US, and welcome to everyone who's coming into the room right now, our audio room. And just want to welcome people as they're arriving. And our call today is with Trathen Heckman, and I'll be introducing him shortly. I wanted to mention that this event is sponsored by Transition US, which is the national hub of the Global Transition Network, which is now in 50 countries around the world. And more information about Transition US can be found at transitionus.org. Lots of blogs, stories. You can sign up for the newsletter and find out more about events like this coming up in the future. And wanted to mention a couple of other things before we begin. Our principal aim in providing these types of events is really to provide practical support to the leaders of transition initiatives, to those who are considering starting one in their community, and to community leaders all across the country and in other countries, those who are joining us from abroad, who are working on resilience building within their locales. So welcome all of you. And we do want to continue to offer the webinars at no cost, but we really do ask you to sincerely look at the benefits that you're getting from these and from this one today, and consider a contribution, a financial contribution to transitionus.org. Would be much appreciated. And if you are not able to do that, we ask you to consider other ways that you can contribute and move this knowledge on into your community. We'll be having a recording of this that you can pass around to people. You can start discussions, etc. And even more importantly, that you begin to work within your communities, if you haven't already, to build resilience building models right there where you live. I wanted to introduce Trathen now. He's our speaker and our guest today. And Trathen Heckman is the founder and executive director of Daily Acts Organization, and he's also the board chair of Transition US. He and I have been working together now for 6 or 7 years, and we're so grateful for all of his input and insight into the work that we're doing. He also serves on the board of the California Urban Water Conservation Council and on the advisory board of the NorCal Community Resilience Network, which many of you might have heard about. Trathen has spent the last 15 years helping to launch and grow a variety of community benefit organizations, alliances, and networks. And he's here to share a lot of his tried and true tips for growing an organization like he has with Daily Acts, engaging community, and working with governments and building bridges across all sorts of sectors within our community. So without further ado, Trathen, over to you.
Thank you so much, Caroline, and thank you everyone who's on this call today. I know there's a lot that pulls at our attention in just life in general, and then a lot of incredibly important issues to be working on. So we really, really appreciate you taking the next hour, hour and a half to be with us. So I looked over the questions in advance that were sent in. There were about 15 of them, which was really helpful. And just wanted to first give you a sense of flow for the conversation. I was originally going to do more just a conversation, and Caroline said for those who are able to see it, PowerPoints are really helpful. And so relative to that, I provided the PowerPoint. And in looking over the questions, there was a lot of questions, some around resource conservation, of how do I save water and grow more food with gray water and engage the community. There were several around community engagement in different ways. Questions around how do we increase our collaboration, and then how do we get from talk to action. There's also a question or two around writing grants and raising money. And, you know, in general, some common themes I heard and that we often see in this work is that people are really busy, and sometimes it's the same small group of folks who are showing up. There's a lot of siloed efforts in our communities, be it in organizations or in governments. Affordability was a thing that came up for a few folks working in affordable housing organizations. And so and then there was a question as well, which said, essentially, what's the largest, longest lasting group you've been involved in? How did it start? How did it grow? Why does it last? And through that, thinking, okay, I'm going to give a background more on the Daily Acts story and some of the work we've been doing. And through that, try and answer the questions that came in. And that'll be sort of a high-level scaling of impact story from beginning on. And, thinking that for about 35 to 45-ish minutes. And then want to leave plenty of time for Q&A as well to see if there's new questions that came in or people want specific detail, be it on fundraising or programs or working with volunteers, things like that. So first, I'd love to, before we start most things in the Daily Acts world and transition board meetings and staff meetings and all sorts of stuff, we take a moment to pause and breathe together. And mindful, if hopefully nobody's driving, but if you are, keep your eyes open and present on the road. But those of you who are in a safe spot, if you want to just put your feet flat on the ground and sit upright, either close or lower your eyes, and just take a nice breath to get present with this moment. Just feel the breath move in, move through your body. And gently exhale. And when you do, let go of any sense of busyness or stress or stuckness. Your attention is somewhere else. Just let all that go. Just land in this moment, in your body and breath, in this conversation about how we unleash the power of our communities. How we have more fun and inspiration and participation and impact while doing good work in the world. Now briefly bring your attention, you could even put your hand on your heart if you want, to around your heart, center of your chest, and think about something you're grateful for. A thing, a person, particularly if you're doing this work in an organization or a transition group in your community, be grateful for about your efforts, someone who's working with you. And lastly, marinate on this, that life is measured not by the number of breaths we take, but by the moments which take our breath away. And then gently open or raise your eyes. And so I think I'll move on to the first slide, which is a picture of David Holmgren, the co-originator of the permaculture design manual and a lot of the permaculture movement. And the slide says, start with your heart. And I think this is really important. There's some folks and groups are heart-centered, others not so much. It's easy to be, our culture is so in our heads and to be chasing after all the important fires and things to fix and try and do and lose track of the basics that as there's ample and growing research from folks like the Heart Math Institute that shows when we focus our attention on our heart, we have greater mental clarity, we have a strengthened immunity, we have greater personal resilience. Our heart is up to 5,000 times more powerful, has a magnetic force than our brain. There's corporations, all kinds of folks are recognizing the importance of not just mindfulness, but of heart-centered effort and action. So beginning with your heart isn't a woo thing, it's a health thing, it's an effectiveness thing, it's a resilience thing. And for those who can't see it, I'll cite the quote that's on David Holmgren's shirt in this picture, which is one of my favorite quotes. It's also sitting directly above my desk right now. And it says, peace. It does not mean to be in a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work. It means to be in the midst of those things and still be calm in your heart. It's incredibly important for us to stay happy and healthy and to be effective when we're dealing with really big issues or really challenging conversations, a whole range of efforts. And just that, if there's nothing else, taking some time to center in your breath every morning and start with your heart, doing this when you're in meetings, when you're entering difficult conversations, when you're dealing with really complex issues, pulling into our heart and our breath and mindful action is incredibly helpful and important. And so Daily Acts organization started in 2002, so this is our 15th year, and we're a sustainability organization based in Sonoma County that is focused on simply helping people and communities live more sustainably by reclaiming the power of our daily actions. And how we do this is we do events and presentations, tours and workshops. We partner with civic agencies and provide sustainability services, things like running water conservation and stormwater programs. We run a program called the Community Resilience Challenge, which you'll hear about. And we're involved in a lot of community coalitions and collaborations because we're a small organization, even though we're bigger than most in the grassroots world. And our mission is so much larger than us. So we are super clear that collaboration is the core to everything we do. And so we, try and take people on sustainability tours and permaculture tours and show them, not just talk about sustainability and a different vision for the future, but showing them the smell and the touch and the taste and the voice and the face of that healthy, just, and resilient world being born. And once they get exposed to this, which it happened for me, and we had a permaculture design course in our backyard this weekend with 36 folks. I see it again and again and again. I hear the story again and again and again from citizens to really high-level ecological leaders. You step into these gardens and these transformed places, and you meet people who are transformed, who are living their vision and purpose, and they're aware of the big problems, but they're actually taking action. It's incredibly impactful to be exposed to the power of transformed people and transformed places. And then from here we say, okay, now how do we do this stuff? Let's actually build skills around gray water and rainwater catchment and lawn transformations, installing gardens, a range of actual practical skill building activities. Then we get people together, 20 people, 50 people, 200 people, and we transform a garden at someone's house or at a community center or at a city hall landscape. We actually get people together and do acts of transformation. And then from there, as I mentioned, with the Community Resilience Challenge, which is an outreach and action campaign that mobilizes thousands of people, schools, churches, businesses, organizations to take action to grow food, save water, conserve resources, and build community. And by being, again, really active in a range of coalitions. And so those are that's the core of Daily Acts models and what we recommend other folks that you could apply in a whole range of ways, whether you're focused on water or energy or housing, showing people what's possible and what's different, helping them build skills and build relationships, finding allies, and then putting out a larger call to action in the community. So these are things that could be applied in a wide range of ways and could help you become financially viable as an organization. And so the next slide, slide 4, true to the core of our belief, daily acts, the power of our daily actions, we're really focused on sort of the Gandhi and be the change. And it's about being the model, starting at home with yourself. Yes, we need systemic change, and the most accessible whole system anyone has is themselves. And so starting where you are, and we're rooted in the core belief that by transforming yourself and your daily actions, you could then go on to transform your home, your garden, your neighborhood, and even put your shoulder to the wheel and help and change our world. And so, again, we teach people the practical skills of local self-reliance. In Daily Acts, we have 3 core components of what it means to be the change. And the first, where we spend most of our time in our programs, is teaching sustainable living solutions. How do you use less resources and regenerate landscapes and things like that? The second is community connection and civic engagement. Encouraging people to talk with and support their neighbors, show up at City Hall and in council, volunteer or work for organizations, be involved in positively influencing the decisions that influence you and your communities. And the third is self-care. put your oxygen mask on first before you assist others. That's what they say when you go on a plane. And it's really important not for us just to burn out trying to do all this good in the world, but we have to start with ourselves. This comes from a lot of great angles, from spiritual practices to folks like Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. His first 3 habits are around being effective in yourself, developing personal leadership, being in integrity. When you start to do those things, then you could be more influential to others. And the more we spend our time on the things we could influence, our circle of influence, then our circle of influence grows. A lot of us have a big circle of concern, the state of the world, the climate crisis, injustice, all these massive problems. But if we spend our time on the circle of concern, we get disempowered. So have a big circle of concern, but spend most of your time on the things you could influence, and your influence grows. And so from being the model and starting at home, then there's this concept that Toby Hemingway speaks about in Gaia's Garden, a permaculture design book, about when you get the right elements in place, then the garden just goes pop, and it surges with vitality, and it's able to sift, sort, and transform any drop of water, any scrap of carbon, any ray of sunshine into this thriving regenerative ecosystem. And so for us, at the base, we do a lot of other things, but at the base of our programs is helping create these really practical models of transformation, like the gardens you see in this picture. This is one on slide 6 of a rental unit. Someone took our permaculture design course, and they didn't even own the house, and they transformed their, from dead soil basically with nothing in it to this incredibly lush, fecund garden, and helping transform neighbors' landscapes and sharing plants and resources. Next slide, slide 7. This is actually family members of mine in Sacramento, and sometimes I'd be fighting with my brother-in-law Rob about politics over the holidays, and they gradually got more involved in doing some of these permaculture activities, and we started giving them a lot of plants, and now they've transformed their lawn into this beautiful edible ecosystem, and they have bees and chickens, and they're raising the Thanksgiving turkey in their backyard. And when I go there now for the holidays, we're hooking up rainwater catchment on Christmas Day and things like that. And then hearing their stories of not just the impact it's having on them, but like me and so many other people, once you start to take positive action in these ways, it starts to change your beliefs and your values, what you buy at the store, where you invest your resources. And other people get really interested and empowered because they see suddenly this vitality, and they want eggs from your chickens and juice from your pomegranates. And just as we see again and again and again in these programs, there's this ripple effect that happens. And so, from just the home scale sort of action, be it own, rent, you could apply these things on the 3rd-story balcony of a condo, as our former vice mayor for the city of Petaluma did, in containers. And so, it's really about just taking positive action wherever you're at, whatever your situation is, not what you'll do at some point when you're in that more idealized future with more time, money, resources, or whatever. And so then in 2009, we installed our first public food forest in partnership with the city of Petaluma. And so working with agencies and saying, yes, let's save water, but a lot of cash for grass programs for cities at that time and even years after would recommend that you rip out your lawn. It then often goes to the landfill or becomes more greenhouse gas emissions as methane gas. But instead of doing that, we said, okay, well, let's transform the lawn, but let's keep it in place by using the technique of sheet mulching, which builds soil and uses recycled and organic materials like layering a lasagna. Let's address stormwater, even though that's a different department currently and not, say, the focus. Let's do water conservation. Let's do stormwater. Let's also plant food and medicine and habitat and beauty, and let's engage the community. So we had 150 people come out over 3 days to transform this landscape, saving 80% of the water resources, addressing stormwater runoff, growing food, medicine, beauty, habitat, community connection, a whole range of benefits, increasing excitement, increasing collaboration. And so that was the first model public food forest we installed in partnership with the city of Petaluma. We then started doing this around the neighborhood and working with other neighbors and mobilizing people and getting free resources, free cardboard and plants, and transforming more and more landscapes. After this, we got the opportunity to then go to Petaluma City Hall in partnership with 2 other organizations And together, we mobilized 250 volunteers and transformed the Petaluma City Hall landscape in a day, saving 1 million gallons of water a year and over $60,000 in installation costs. And this was part of the first 350.org International Day of Climate Action. From here, we take these simple techniques that we did at one landscape, things like sheet mulching, to save water and build soil, and partner with the city to help launch their Mulch Madness program, for which now they've provided free resources to sheet mulch over 500 lawns, saving 20+ million gallons of water a year. And those are old numbers. Those are from a few years ago, so it's even more lawns now. And so it's saving water, and it's building soil, and it's creating opportunities for citizens to be engaged. It's supporting local businesses who sell compost and mulch materials. And a lot of our solutions we focus on, even though we're trying to scale these solutions out, we focus on low cost and low tech, nature-sourced and people-powered solutions. And then you start to look around, running these different programs, partnering with other organizations, schools, churches, businesses, citizens getting engaged and actually participating in simple acts of transformation, and then the whole town starts to go pop. And then this ripples through other communities as well. I go down almost any street in Petaluma and even other cities around us, and there's 2, 3, 4 front yard gardens in a lot of neighborhoods. And it's gone from the occasional thing to a more frequent thing. And also what we hear again and again, people get out and they simply make some changes in their landscape in the front. They're saving resources. They're growing more food, medicine, habitat, beauty, and they're meeting neighbors more so than sometimes ever before. We consistently hear how, and I see it in our own neighborhood, how again and again these landscapes become a magnet for community connection and engagement. And so next slide, slide 13, and then you're like, okay, wow, from 1 lawn to 500 to more, together we could grow a sheet mulch movement. And you just start to see these practices taking root. Small, low cost, low tech, people powered, nature sourced, just doing what nature does, building soil, that we could actually really start to take these small and simple solutions to scale when we engage community, when we partner with agencies and other organizations. Slide 26, creating people-powered parks. So, in anything, start small. Start with one small example and then build from there. And that's what we've done throughout the last 15 years in our work. And I'll say, too, just a pause of, for the first 5 or 6 years of Daily Acts, we were largely a volunteer-based organization with very little budget, which was challenging and is also good because it forced us to get really clear on doing the things that mattered to us and what we were really passionate about and finding what we were good at and really caring for our community of volunteers because they were the ones powering everything. And so, one thing in regards to caring for volunteers, I would just say nurture the hell out of your supporters and show them the difference they make and why it matters. After people come to events, do thank you emails and follow-up calls. What'd you think? Would you like to be involved? And so doing those sort of activities really helped us get our foundation in place of our foundation of our beliefs and our core relationships and partners and our core programs. From there, always trying to figure out how do we get more funded, we started writing grants, and which even when we didn't get the grants, it forced us to, again, really clarify what's the impact we're having, to start trying to measure our impact, be it in gallons of water saved or volunteer hours registered. And so from there, then our city partnerships were really a vehicle to letting us actually start to build up our staffing capacity of getting funded work by partnering with cities and having more impact. And I'll talk a bit more about it later. And then carrying forward to present day, so just a calibration of where we've grown to from there is Daily Acts has 10 full-time staff now and some part-time folks and a lot of volunteers that power us. And our budget's around $600,000, which is small in the larger world relative to grassroots organizations. The vast majority of grassroots groups are well under $500K. And a lot of them, like in the case of the Transition Town movement, they're almost purely volunteer powered. And so so we feel fortunate for the staff and budget we could have because we could do a lot more with our team and then with our volunteer efforts by being able to build up to that. So I just want to pause and give that bit of context that I forgot to give up front. And so, then we started back to the creating people-powered parks. Once we had a couple models, other cities and other places were interested. And we didn't do this on our own. We partnered with great local green businesses like Permaculture Artisans, a permaculture landscape company, and Equinox. We partnered with high school students and schools and churches. And again, sort of who's interested, who has shared vision or shared goals, and how can we collaborate to do more with the resources we have together. Another example within this realm is our work through gray water. And so gray water is defined differently in different states, but it's essentially your non-black water. Your black water is your toilet water, and then in some places like California where we're trying to change it, your kitchen sink water. So it's your laundry water, your shower, your bathroom sink, that kind of thing. And so we installed the first permitted household gray water system in Sonoma County, again by collaborating, by partnering with a permaculturist who had a civil engineer stamp, partnering with the city, showing the city an existing model. And once we got that gray water system through, we taught it as a workshop, got on the cover of the newspaper. Media is another important piece. And that enabled us to engage in a group in our county that was one of a half a dozen groups around the state of California who were working at making the gray water law more sustainable, more affordable, more accessible to people. And so collectively, by a lot of different folks working around the state and inspiring people to submit letters and send in notes and getting things in the media, the gray water law changed around 2009. And then we were able to go back to our city and our county and partner, and the next year we did 5 gray water systems in a weekend in our neighborhood by partnering with the city of Petaluma. Then the next year we did 13 gray water systems in a week in 2 cities. And then we did the 100 gray water system challenge. And so, we're able to go again from 1 gray water system, moving some local policy, to partnering with agencies and helping them bring this sort of programming to our community. And now we've probably installed over 100 gray water systems over the years, and we're training other people how to install them, and we've supported people to then get jobs doing this work so they can build right livelihood. And it really depended on work of like the folks of Gray Water Action and a range of partners. Again, this isn't something we did on our own. We collaborated with a lot of folks to make it happen. And so again, just going over really high level, not the details of these things, but just to give a glimpse of how you could take small solutions and start to move them towards scale. The next example is the 350 Garden Challenge, which we launched in 2010. Not related to 350.org, but inspired in the same way by the need to get at 350 parts per million of greenhouse gas emissions. And so recognizing, again, the scale of our challenges and feeling like we need to figure out how to step up bigger, a small group of us from different organizations got together with this outlandish vision of planting 350 gardens in a weekend. And so we were fortunate enough through relationships that helped us get some funding from our water agency in Sonoma County and to partner with the health department and help them launch a gardening program called iGrow that they're wanting to support. So again, sort of trying to look cross-sector and also knowing of, even though we're a small organization or set of organizations, by taking a holistic approach, we could actually have a larger influence because, again, efforts could be siloed. The water people are more focused on water and the food people on food and the health people on health. And so we have the idea for this 350 Garden Challenge of planting and revitalizing 350 gardens that were water-wise, and they were growing food, and they were engaging community members. And it's this simple, tangible, practical thing, but it's a big, bold goal. And so we were shocked when, switching to slide 17, in a matter of 17 weeks, the community came together, schools, churches, businesses, organizations, and planted and revitalized over 600 gardens. It was truly incredible. And we're collectively like, wow, many hands make light work. Look at the power of these solutions. And that got a bunch of media and help slowly build further political power. Because if you can mobilize a lot of people to get a lot of things done, it gets attention and gives you more opportunity. And so we continue to grow that effort. The next year it became the Home and Garden Challenge. And it kept on doubling in size, growing bigger and bigger. Other organizations from other places had heard about it, and they wanted to replicate it. So we're like, grab it, run with it. We partnered with Transition US to launch the first Transition Challenge based on the 350 Garden Challenge. And so again, from this idea of going from educational tours to skill building workshops, to getting people together and actually doing stuff, transforming things, to using the vehicle of a community challenge, a community call to action to align lots of people and lots of resources around shared vision, shared action, collective impact. These are things that you could apply to a wide range of communities or programs. Next slide, slide 18. I think a big part of this is the resilience and the get-done-itness attitude of the people in our movement and growing more of that. There's a woman named Tina Newhousel that reached out to me, and she was interested. She heard about the challenge, and we got together in our backyard one night, and I was pruning and grafting fruit trees, and I was laying out our programs and talking about the challenge and saying, grab it, run with it, take it, adapt it, and evolve it if you want. And she did just that, and she went back to her community in Contra Costa. And that year, within a matter of months, they mobilized over 1,000 home and garden actions around growing food and saving water and saving energy. And so we were getting really inspired by other people like that who are starting to replicate these programs. And so, just in brief, it continued to grow and grow and grow. Slide 19, in 2012, we had over 2,300 local actions and double that many regionally and nationally. Slide 20, the power of getting results together. A lot of times we talk about these big goals and this big need, but the literal feeling it conveys when you take either a small or a big action, but it's in unison with lots and lots of other people, it's an important feeling and impact across schools, churches, businesses, organizations. And again, it enables us to build our relationships, our influence, our power. Slide 21. And so as I mentioned, people start getting interested in replicating the challenge in some of the other programs. And so we initially were like, grab it, run with it, do what you want with it. It's open source. And handful of groups on the screen, Sustainable Contra Costa, Transition US, Marin Garden Challenge, a couple other groups around the country started replicating it and innovating it in their way. And next slide, slide 22, an important part of the challenge in a lot of these programs in general, if you're focused on important issues, and especially if there's an inspiration angle, the media loves this stuff. And so through time, we'd reach out to the media and we'd share our inspiration in these stories. And we were fortunate enough, and we have been through time, to get lots and lots and lots of good media. At least a dozen or more times we've had cover stories in a range of papers. We've done over 100 interviews and articles. And so it's another way to spread the word and increase the impact and have more influence, is getting this work in the media. It builds a range of support, including with agencies and elected officials. Next slide, slide 23. Just community aligned in acts of care and celebration. And this is just to say, whatever your organization or focus, getting community together and doing something on issues that are meaningful to you and celebrating the good works. Yes, we're facing enormous challenges. There's a great quote that says, be hopeful though you know the truth. But it's so important to celebrate and highlight and lift up what's working and the people who are doing that. And when we do this, there's a lot more power. For folks who are aware of Abraham Maslow and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, a lot of times we see in these programs, people will come to a tour, a workshop, a garden installation, whatever it is, and sometimes they're thinking, okay, I want to learn how to do gray water. I want to learn how to build skills in a particular area. But then the thing we hear again and again and again, a notch up from that base level need, the base needs at the bottom of the pyramid in Maslow, to some of the other needs, and that's connection. People are hungry for connection. We're so disconnected from ourselves and each other and nature. And so People may come to a gray water workshop thinking they want gray water, but then what really satisfies them is that they're meeting other like minds and other hearts. And then a notch up from that is that they feel a part of something bigger in the world, something important, a higher purpose, whatever you'd want to call it. And so we, build this in various ways to our talks, our programs, our things. But if you want to inspire and engage people and get them back, meet the needs beyond what they think they even have potentially. Give them the skills they're looking for, but create that community connection celebration container and bring it back to this rare and precious planetary moment and the power of their daily actions to affect positive change and what they're a part of. When people experience more of those needs higher up Maslow's pyramid, or however you'd want to frame it, it satisfies people in really deep and powerful ways. And it's important to be able to get them back and affect greater change. So community aligned and acts of care and celebration, there's a lot to that. Next slide, slide 24. Align and unleash communities. This is so, after years of the 350 Garden Challenge and the 350 Home and Garden Challenge and evolving it and just telling groups who are interested, grab it, run with it, adapt it, use this community challenge framework. In 2014, we said, okay, we really need to take more of a collective impact approach, have shared vision and shared language, shared branding, shared measurable results. And so we rebranded the program, the Community Resilience Challenge, and spoke with other organizations who were implementing it, and all came together around this shared language. And in doing so, we also have, for groups to take in the spring. The Community Resilience Challenge operates in the spring. Different organizations implement at different times, but roughly March or April through May or June. And we have all these different resources, materials you could adapt, a website you register the actions. You could go through Daily Acts, Transition US. Different organizations will implement it in their communities and will host their own website, like the East Bay Community Resilience Challenge. And so you could both focus on local actions and projects, whatever they may be, but then you go and you click on the website and you register your action, and it goes to the main Resilience Challenge webpage, and you're able to register all those different actions or projects. So you have this sort of local autonomy and initiative, but then you also have the collective results of what's the impact of what we're doing together across food, water, energy, waste, community. And so that's a tool that people could currently use and adapt. We had last year for the first time Ash Village out of Asheville. They ran the challenge and registered over 8,000 actions, 800 actions in their community. And it's just an easy plug-and-play thing you could use, and groups evolve it as they go. We have more resources on that, but I just want to plant that seed as one replicable model. So next slide, slide 25. This is just, this is one of over 7,000 actions in Sonoma County, this lawn. And then you go to slide 25. Slide 26. And so the Hague saved tens of thousands of gallons of water by transforming their lawn, and they installed community benches and a free library. And again, this idea I mentioned earlier that we hear again and again and again, saving a lot of resources, food, medicine, beauty, habitat. And they met more neighbors within 3 months of doing this project than in 3 decades of living in their neighborhood. And this is one of 7,000 local actions, not all garden actions. Energy audits and kids with wagons who are taking light bulbs and strawberry plants down the street and giving them out to neighbors, a whole range of different sort of church actions. But, the power of these actions that bring people together and transform and build community. So I'm going to move more quickly through a few of these slides. Slide 27 just shows that, over 16,000 collective actions and projects in the 2014 Resilience Challenge. Next slide, over 21,000 actions in 2015. We again increased the number of actions in 2016. Slide 29, I just want to briefly touch on 2 things. Last year, the drought was huge in California, so it took a lot of our attention and effort. And in this idea of collaboration and trying to find different partners, we had a couple collaborations which are really interesting. we partnered with the Youth Ecology Corps in Sonoma County and a range of agencies, and we had 8 youth from pretty challenging backgrounds, and they basically transformed 30 lawns in 30 days, including installing a city hall landscape and a model landscape at a church. And it was incredibly empowering for them to be out in neighborhoods, transforming landscapes, building skills around, that could be green career skills, because landscape transformation is great. A lot of these sort of things are in demand these days. And just feeling part of a larger movement. The next picture on that page is a picture from a lawn transformation we did. And this is an interesting partnership because we partnered with Clear Blue Commercial, a commercial real estate company. And originally we helped them transform their lawn while saving a lot of money and water. And then they expressed interest in wanting to make this a part of their business. So we trained them on how to do landscape installations, and we led a couple landscape installation transformations that they partnered on and co-led. And then we supported them to launch Mulch stock last year, which is the largest single-day lawn transformation on record. 60,000 square feet of turf, 125 volunteers, saving 1.5 million gallons of water from a day's work while building soil, building communities, other impacts. And the cool thing about this is since then they've won 3 different community awards, not necessarily for green, just philanthropy and community benefit awards. And so this is a commercial real estate company who's running these sort of grassroots programs. They're saving water, they're saving their clients money, and they're being recognized for it. And I would have never thought we'd be partnering with commercial real estate companies. So again, we're sort of always looking of where can there be shared interest? Who can we partner with? Next slide, slide 30, building partnerships. Super, super important. Like I said, I've mentioned before, we partner widely. It's really our partners that help us achieve everything we're able to achieve. And this ranges across the gamut of organizations and agencies you could think of, the ones that are on the screen and many more. Slide 31, and just looking at how are we a part of, through our small piece and through trying to provide replicable programs and train and learn from other folks in growing this movement. The transition movement, the climate justice movement, all these related movements that are trying to care for people in place. Next slide. I just want to briefly include this in here. This is less about the transition work, but it was I was looking over notes at different presentations, and since this is hosted by Transition US, there's just a few notes on this slide that are very resonant to what we found successful with Daily Acts and probably why I'm so involved in Transition US. And it talks about just creating a vision of an abundant future, doing awareness-raising activities, showing how simple practical changes can make a big difference, focusing on a collective response, having a focus that is both inner and outer, meaning affect change in the world, but there's an inner aspect of transition, of leadership development, the self-care piece as well, utilizing the power of hope and optimism, and really looking at how can we create models that could spread and adopt and learn from other models. So we're about 35 minutes in, have a few more minutes that I'm going to do, and now I'm going to focus on a section of looking at, which I think is really critical, of sort of the personal ecology and personal leadership piece of how do we stay inspired and focused on what matters, is what it says on slide 33, and then talking a bit about how do we apply this to our groups. And then I'm going to cycle back and, again, try to answer throughout, but more directly answer the questions that came in. But I just want to take a pause and see if there's any, couple key questions that are coming up for folks, or Caroline, if you see anything coming up on your screen.
Well, Trathen, I'm just inspired always by all the great work that you're doing. And it is, I think, important to always reiterate that you're doing the projects that you landed on doing, but in other communities, they might reasonably come up with other activities that then they, over time, take to scale. So it's in part, you've got great ideas that are replicable in themselves, but also that process is replicable, starting small and growing your expertise and spreading it out. So I just think that is always, great to see through that lens. And we can just see if there's any clarifying questions right now before Trathen moves on, and then we will open up for Q&A. So if there's something that you just really would help you through the next part of the presentation, press 1 on your keypad, and I can call on a couple of people. So let's just see if there's anything that comes up where people are, confused or whatever, just need a little more information. So again, pressing 1 on your keypad, and Trathen, looks like we're all with you, so I think we can go right back into your closing set of slides.
Fabulous. And thank you for calling that out, Caroline, because it's worth repeating multiple times of this is a particular set of place-based examples of how we sort of organically and strategically evolved. But I think, like you said, some of the underpinning principles of what's been effective can be applied in a ton of different places, from the start small, start with your inspiration, what you're really passionate about. Be very encouraging and supportive of volunteers, and find people, like Michelle Obama said, she spoke about finding where your heart's greatest gladness meets the world's deepest need. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And I would say, sort of adding to that, find that spot. But then if you're in an organization, you're trying to grow an initiative doing that, how does that thing that you're importantly wanting to address, that you're passionate about, how does that tie with the things that you're really good at or can get good at? And that can also be a resource engine. Resources being financial resources, people resources, skills, media, whole range of things. So finding that issue you're burning to address that you could do really well, and that can help you find and gain the resources to sustain your efforts. So relative to how do we stay inspired and focused on what matters, move to slide 34. I think, in that core way that at the core, regenerating our core connections and our connection to self, our connection to nature, and our connection to community. So whatever your issue area that you're working on, of reconnecting to sort of who you are and why you're on the planet in this precious moment, and what are your natural gifts and inspirations, of connecting to your community of like minds and like hearts and supporters, the people you want to work with and help wherever you're at. And then reconnecting to nature. Nature is, we have to regain our eco-literacy and eco-design in all aspects of our lives. Nature is incredibly healing. And again, whether you're on a balcony or in a neighborhood or a city, or it doesn't matter, but having that nature connection piece is important. And if we have those components in our lives and the programs and activities we're doing, I think it's going to help us be more effective and draw the support we need. Next slide, slide number 35, is having a strong personal compass. Again, kind of the Gandhian be the change and sort of the Stephen Covey lens of, if we want to be able to affect a larger change in the world, we have to start with ourselves. We have to sustain ourselves. I think it's so core. It really doesn't matter what issue you're trying to address or where you're at, and it comes from a ton of different angles. And so for me and in our work and daily acts, in our organization and in our programs, we try and help people develop that clarity around, what's your purpose, your passion, your values, your vision. What are you really good at? Who are your reference points, either as people or organizations? And having a really good compass helps us stay true to the things that matter the most. And so we can really put our attention to working on the issues that we're deeply called to. And it gives us a source of power beyond, we're facing difficult times and we face difficult challenges in our lives and our day-to-day. If you're connected to the power of something larger than you, it sustains you in powerful ways, and it comes through, and that is incredibly drawing to people. People want to be around that sense of power and agency and purpose larger than self. That's an incredible force for drawing attention and support. And so at this point, I'm going to share a few quotes along this line of starting with yourself. This is from Stephen Covey, who said, spend 1 hour a day forever on the daily private victory, spiritual, physical, emotional, mental dimensions of development. This will affect every decision, every relationship, improving the quality and effectiveness of every hour of your day, including the depth of your sleep and restfulness. So, having a morning practice, recentering on your vision, your values, your purpose. It could take 5 minutes or it could take an hour. I do this every single day, and it absolutely is one of the most essential things that helps me gain clarity about the big challenges I'm chewing on, that I'm confused about, or the big emotional triggers, whatever it is. Aristotle said, we are what we do repeatedly. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So what do you need to surround yourselves with to be effective to address the important issues you're wanting to address in your organizations and your life? And Confucius said, to put the world in order, we must first put the nation in order. To put the nation in order, we must put the family in order. To put the family in order, we must cultivate our personal life. And to cultivate our personal life, we must set our hearts right. So again, going back to that. And just 2 more quotes in this regard. Jim Collins is a really amazing, one of the best-selling leadership authors of all time. And from his book, Great by Choice, with the subline, Chaos, Uncertainty, and Luck, Why Some Thrive Despite Them All, he's already spent his career looking at from the corporate world, because that's where the data is, not because that's just his only interest. He wants to make the world a better place. But looking at thousands of years worth of collective data of corporations and who are the leaders and the companies that are by far more successful than anybody else in their field. And it's a great book. There's a lot of great insights you could apply to your life or to any organization you're in. But here's a couple of things that he said in that. Those who bring the most significant change in the world are themselves enormously consistent in their approach. So as a person, as an organization, finding, again, what are you really good at? What actually works? What are the things you need to not do that don't work, that shoot you or your group in the foot again and again? And then another one, again, kind of back to the choice, same sort of message. If there's one overarching message arising from 6,000 years of corporate history across all our research, greatness is not primarily a matter of circumstance. It is a matter of choice and discipline. So again, there's the circle of concern and the circle of influence. And so really encouraging folks to develop a good personal practice, get clear, and do this as groups. Get clear on what are you really good at? What are you really inspired about? How do you handle your negative emotional triggers? How do you sustain in this work over the long haul? And so developing a strong personal compass and set of practices is really important in this regard. Next slide, which is slide 36. And as Thich Nhat Hanh said, all change begins with awareness. So meditation, journaling, nature, sit spot, exercise, whole range of practices. There's a lot of great books on this too. There's a book called The Power of Habit. Just a lot of research on how do people live their potential. What are the simple things they do day to day to be effective? And then switching now gears to, how do we, slide 37, how do we grow groups that stay inspired while focusing on what matters in building capacity? Slide 38, again, a strong compass. Are you clear on your purpose and your vision and your mission? Do you have goals that are specific and measurable and time sensitive? Having strong partnerships and effective collaborations. And again, with partnerships, one of the most important things we contribute there is our presence. And, there's a lot of great writing and work being done on the power of networks and more ecosystemic efforts. So, it's not a one-time thing. Daily Acts 15 years in, we're always working on our compass. And with Transition US, we do it a fair bit too, of is this the best articulation of what matters most to this, and recentering with the power of our purpose, and then what that looks like in our community. Next slide, slide 39. Just a few examples from our work of, we call, how do we stay lit and aligned, or inspired and aligned? And so for us is focusing on what's working to grow more of it, has been a highlight. And again, from the beginning, the things that have most lit me and us up and those people, those are the solutions we put our attention on that we tried to grow and share. So we're deeply inspired by it, and that creates an infectiousness. When you're really inspired and empowered by something, then other people catch that. We have work on what we call culture of eco-efficaciousness. And, we do meditation at the start of our staff and board meetings. We have regular staff retreats. We have happy hours and activities like mead making, just to get the team together and build relationships. We do monthly personal ecology sessions, wide range of activities. It's important to do really good work in the world and be focused on that, but also really be building our relationships. And then whether you're volunteer-based or whatever size your organization, that operational excellence, working on having good facilitation and clear agendas. Simple statements like, what's our next action? We've enculturated that to where you could talk about these big, heady things and you get down to, okay, what's the next priority thing and when does it need to be done? Little practices of just how to be more effective. And week after week, month after month, year after year, project after project, wrapping what we do. How did that go? What worked? What didn't? What would we do differently? Those simple little practices just to continually always improve what we do. And then having good planning, doing our best to measure our results. And no matter whether you're operating on no funds or a shoestring, how do you just have high quality in what you're doing? Always move forward with imperfect actions. So those are just some of the practices we've found to work through time. Next slide, slide 40. And be wrapping up here in a second. Of nurturing community. So fundraising-wise, about a third of our budget is government contracts that's built up through time, doing water conservation, stormwater, and related programs. I also will say in the bigger picture, in regional and state networks, we're working on this as a really important pathway, I think, for organizations in our movement to run programs in our communities, partnering with cities and get funded to do it, to create these models and influence policy and things. So we're putting a lot of attention there, but that's a third of our budget. About a third of our budget is donations, a little bit less than a third grants, and then program fees and business sponsorships and things like that. This is a picture in this slide, which is slide 40, of our breakfast in a couple weeks, Ripple the World. We get 600 engaged citizens and leaders together, and it follows the Benavon model, if you want to know about this. Look it up, and so this is, again, we found a model 8 years ago that worked for hosting our fundraising event, a free event, but with an ask, and this event raises a significant portion of our budget each year and has really enabled us to build our capacity and build our relationships and create new partnerships and land more city relationships. It's had an enormous array of positive impacts, and even small organizations could apply this model. So I encourage you to take a peek at the Benavon model. And then lastly, just practicing regenerative hedonism or sustainable hedonism. If we want to have more fun, increase our inspiration and participation and impact, really being the change we wish to see and being the vision of what we want different in the world, in our lives, in our organizations, is a great way to draw more time and attention. That's why we highlight these incredible tour model sites and these different speakers. So that's really a great way to inspire and engage people, by partnering with cities and getting donations from people who show up. When they're inspired to take action, if they think the programs are effective, then people are able to fund it, or agencies are willing to fund it. And so it could be a part of growing your revenue model as well, showing encouragement and appreciation for people as well. Like I said, follow-up calls, follow-up emails, little touches. We do a big volunteer celebration that we just did a few weeks ago. We're just always thinking, how can we better nurture and engage our community? And people really appreciate that, and they keep showing up if you do. So that's everything. I want to make sure to leave, 15 or so minutes to be able to answer any questions. And so thanks for being here, and thanks for the work you're doing in your communities. And, I hope this was helpful in some shape or form.
Trathen, thank you so much. Very, very inspiring. And I do want to open it up for people by asking you if you have any specific questions, want Trathen to go into more depth in any particular area. Press 1 on your keypad, and then I'll mic you and you can ask Trathen your questions. So on your phone keypad, just press 1 if you have any question or if you want to bring a comment forward. So please do go ahead, and I know for some of you it's maybe time to go back to work, but hopefully we'll get have time for your questions. So Sarah Moore, go ahead.
Hey Trathen, thanks for doing your presentation. I have a question about decision-making models and how to look at, like, maybe you could suggest a picture of having an organization that has a board and functions in a more traditional way but nurtures grassroots efforts that function more collaboratively, and how to think about integrating both of those ways of doing business into an organization.
Yeah, I love that. That is a really great question. And I'll say, I think sometimes too that there's a lot of great models emerging, like holacracy, which the regional network is working on. And so there's some good models that are out there. And I would say too, we could sometimes tend to put hierarchy or top-down structure, these sort of things, in the bucket of bad and old model. And so, because we have, and technically I'm the ED, and though we operate in a very flat way, we have a board of directors who in theory is my boss, and then I'm the ED of the organization. But the reality is it's more servant-based leadership. What we've found to be effective through time, if people are not engaged and empowered at all levels, from the community to staff and on, then I just don't think it's going to be that effective through time. And so for us, like when it comes to hiring decisions, there's been multiple times where I really preferred someone else. And if the team wanted to make the decision, they felt better about who that staff member should be. That's where the power is, and that's the decision that's made. And so there's very few organizations in our decisions that would actually fall on me. We generally consult the people who are impacted by the decision. We have a senior team, and a program team, and an operations team, and then regular retreats. But it's a pretty flat decision-making structure. And we do regular staff surveys and check-ins to really make sure people are engaged. And so we're kind of what I call as a modified hierarchy. We have what it looks like on paper, but again, the reality, and we're always listening. If you're not listening to your community and the people on your team, I've found through time that they're not going to be happy and effective and inspired. And so really for us, rather than any one structure, it's just, are you in regular conversation? Do people feel empowered? They have the level of agency they want. And I asked Starhawk about this some years ago, who's written a book on sort of effective structures and communication and things. And what she said to me is that, it didn't matter so much that everybody had equal power, but equal opportunity to earn and use power. She said something to that effect, which I thought made a lot of sense. So I would say, find the structure that works for you, but like you said, really make sure people are feeling engaged and active. And so I don't have a particular model for that. And we're looking at, things like holacratic structures, and we're always going like, okay, do we change how we're doing something efficiently? And so we're really in conversation about that. And if the team decides that they want to change, then we're going to change is how where we're at. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you feel free to re-ask that. I don't know that I directly answered it, but I just gave some thoughts on it. So if you want something more specific, I'm happy to try again.
I think just a small follow-up would be any comment that you have about the evolution of that model over time as you grew, or any growing pains that went along with that.
Definitely lots of growing pains in organizations. And it's funny because in the early days, I tried to, I'm the main founder and the person who's been there a zillion hours a week since the beginning. Lots of other amazing people to help make it happen. But early on, I tried to give away too much power and have other people do things. And the feedback I got was that, we're happy with our piece. We really want you to take care of those things. And so it's kind of interesting. So I tried in the beginning, like I didn't want to be, say, the person, quote unquote, making the decisions. And so just through time, I'm constantly putting it back out to the team of, does this work? Does our structure work? Last year at a retreat, our team decided that we needed to change update our vision, our mission statement. I would have chosen not to, but it's like, okay, if that's what the team wants. And so really for us at this point, having consistent check-ins at a range of scales from staff retreats to board staff retreats. So you have those touch-in points. And that's why we're doing staff surveys and we do reviews. We do this whole range of activities to really are people as empowered and inspired as they can be? Are they feeling taken care of? Are their needs met? And so I guess that's the one thing I would say is through time as a compass, we've put more and more attention to really staying checked in with our team at all scales and our community to make sure we're meeting their needs. And so that's the one thing that I would say is just listen really well and, solve the problems as you go.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Great. Thank you, Trathen, as well. So I'm, again, inviting people to press 1 on your keypad if you have more questions or comments. And Trathen, I've got one for you. I know that in the transition work, it's very encouraged to build bridges to government. And in our present governmental situation, sometimes that really seems like a far reach. If you're in a bigger city, it seems harder than if you're in a smaller place, etc. But I know you're tapping into government on so many scales, including very local to county to state. And just wonder if you have any tips for people on, what's the pathway? What are some good tips of engaging government in resilience building within their locales?
Sure. And we just hosted a panel, or I just hosted a panel at the North American Permaculture Convergence with our state senator, Mike McGuire, our county supervisor, James Gore, and then 2 senior staff from departments in the county to get a range of government perspective. But a thing I would say is before we worked with government, coming from a grassroots activist perspective, I think I had these ideas in my head about what government was and, not necessarily the best perception. And once we started partnering with government, I recognized, there's people who are just like us and who have the same needs and concerns at all scales of government. The people we work from staff to senior staff to high-level electeds, they really want to see the kind of transformation that we want to. And they've chosen the route of being in sometimes big, difficult organizations to move. And so first, just don't be afraid to engage. And then, just meet. They're public servants. They will have meetings with you if you email their district director or whoever. You'd be surprised how easy it can be to get a meeting with a staff or an elected official. And, then if and when you do, start getting tuned into what are their concerns, what are their issues. You could do things like find out what your strategic plan is or your goals for your city, your county government, whatever it is. And so knowing what their concerns are and trying to find common language between what you care about and what they care about. And that could occur through research ahead of time or speaking with other people or speaking with them. But I think it's really important to try and understand where they're coming from. And I will say that government agencies all over, they really get the need for community engagement. They don't always know how to do it. And so a lot of us in the grassroots, we know how to do community engagement. And so there's a real need and a desire that I'm seeing to partner with the grassroots. But, put on a collar shirt, speak to the way they hear things, developing those skills through time. But first off, I would say don't be afraid to reach out and connect with them.
Great. Thank you, Trathen. And we don't have any hands up, which I'm surprised by. I think you covered things so well in your presentation, Trathen. And I will ask people again, this is your last chance, pressing 1 on your keypad if you have a question or comment. And then I'll, Trathen, just turn it back to you for sort of a closing comment, and then I'll just wrap up with a couple of comments. So not seeing any hands up, and over to you for a closing comment, Trathen.
Sure. Yeah, just the same of the power of your daily actions and finding your inspiration in a way that cares for community and regenerates nature. Transition US has a lot of amazing models. Daily Acts has models like the Community Resilience Challenge that you could take right now and implement in your community next spring. So if you want to get engaged with us further, you could go to dailyacts.org. We just live in this really rare and precious planetary moment. And to build the power of our grassroots groups and our networks and our organizations and how we work together, I think is incredibly important. And so be heartened by the larger efforts that are happening and connect yourself with them more fully where you are able. And as Caroline mentioned, if you're able to, Transition US is doing incredible work trying to serve the whole country on a very small budget and staff. And so if you're inspired and able to contribute to Transition US or Daily Acts, both organizations will put your precious, heart-filled dollars to work well. And support your local efforts. If you're not involved in groups yet, reach out to a local sustainability organization, transition town group, and get engaged. But thank you so much for all of your time and effort, and take heart and take action.
Thank you, Trathen, for sharing such bounty of wisdom and models and sort of a path forward. Much appreciated, and wanted to let people know that recording will be posted on that event page in about 10 days' time, so please share it broadly with others. And I'm going to unmic people so you can all give a shout out to Trathen as we say goodbye. You can give him a thank you and let him know where you're from. So here we go, and thank you, Trathen, once again, and you're all unmiked.